what a difference September was depending on where you were. The first half was hot, sunny, mostly dry. The second half, cloudy, gloomy, rainy, chilly, coastal flooding, just yucky overall. It was pretty much that simple. Right in the 15th of the month, we saw that split, and we had the remnants of Ophelia come through. We had the longest heat wave in September's history, and we also have a little bit of a fall foliage preview here on our Something in the Air podcast. New Jersey State Climatologist and my birthday buddy, as well as weather dad, Dr. Dave Robinson, is back here. Tune in. We'll talk to you all about it. And happy October, everyone. We are joined with New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. Dr. Robinson, we just saw each other on Saturday for the Rutgers football game. Weather not as nice as it is today on Monday, although the sun did peak out a little bit on last Saturday.
It was better than we expected, and given that the heavy rain of Friday stayed to our east, we didn't have to cross River Road as a river to get to the game.
Yeah, because it was getting pretty close to maybe River Road being like a river. And remember, of course, 2 years ago with Ida, they canceled or postponed the Rutgers football game from Thursday to Saturday because River Road, like you said, was a river. Although that park across the street, Johnson Park, where you can tailgate, was closed this past Saturday because of the flooding rain that they had. Let's just talk about that real quick. I know it was mostly in the northern part of the state. It was still connected to Tropical Storm Ophelia in some way, shape, or form. And we'll get into what happened the last full week of September in just a minute. But overall, my impression from this was, if we didn't have Ida 2 years ago, this would have been like the flooding event. I feel like for a lot of Hudson County and in New York City. Just want to know your quick thoughts.
Oh, no question about that. But the state, as I was suggesting, really dodged the bulk of the bullet.
Yeah.
We had this has been hidden by the press, but 10 inches of rain fell in Bradley Beach, which exceeds anything I saw in New York City and the surrounding area. That plume of moisture just caught the eastern end of Monmouth County and then blasted up into Brooklyn, Queens, and up through the 5 boroughs. So, as you mentioned, Hoboken had some flooding, Jersey City, they had 3-4 inches of rain. But take that storm 30 miles to the west, and we would have been talking about some flooding, the equivalent in some respects of Ida. And yeah, that, as we remember, was a deadly flood. It's really remarkable that there were no fatalities from flooding in the 5 boroughs or in Monmouth County. So be very grateful for that.
Yeah, and I'm hoping it was people were taking the warning and they can kind of relate to this to Ida when they're thinking about this event. A lot of times, we talk about, well, people, if they don't have a recollection of a previous storm and that kind of storm is coming, you don't know what to prepare for. This, people in New York and northeastern New Jersey certainly had that. I know you were telling me about Bradley Beach at the Rutgers football game, so I do remember that. That's a little outside of our coverage area, so I haven't mentioned it, but I did want to say, typically, if you were an LBI on north in Ocean County, it was between, and you can correct me on the specifics, but I believe it was between 1.5 inches to 3 inches of rain, highest near the Monmouth County border. But Atlantic City International Airport saw, just about 1.25 inches of rain. Atlantic City Marina itself saw about the same. So it was a good drink of water for us, on the 28th into the 29th. But it certainly wasn't the flooding, almost catastrophic rain we saw up north. Anything you want to add with that? And then we'll turn to the last full weekend of September.
I was going to say, no, it wasn't the rainfall of the month in a very wet month down in a good portion of your readership area, although portions of it were among the driest in the state.
Right. And relatively speaking, right, because I think we were above average just about everywhere, if not everywhere, I have to imagine. But let's get into the weekend of the 23rd into the 24th. I mean, really it was a good weekend to stay on the couch and watch television guilt-free all weekend long, or do household chores. But it was with Tropical Storm Ophelia, which made landfall in North Carolina. it was pretty much a remnant storm by the time it got here, but it had lots of tropical moisture. Atlantic City International Airport broke the rainfall record by more than triple. Now, the last times that happened, it was just a couple of years ago, I believe 2018, we tripled the daily rainfall record. But it was very windy. We had 60-mile-an-hour gusts in 4 locations. I believe Barnegat Light at 63 was the highest. Rain was over 3 inches of rain in a number of spots. If you didn't get 3 inches, you didn't go big enough on this storm. And then the coastal flooding. We had coastal flooding starting with the Saturday PM high tide. It was moderate in some spots, but just with the rain and the flooding, there was a lot of road closures. It was just straight difficult to get around the barrier islands. And we had some power outages, not as bad as it could have been. The most significant I saw was Bridgeton. About a quarter of Bridgeton was without power at one point in time. And then I just want to say the coastal flooding, going back to it, it lingered. We were recording this on October the 2nd, and in some way, shape, or form, it's still ongoing, this coastal flooding. We're even today on October 2nd, where we're recording, we're still dealing with some coastal flooding. Part of it bumped up by the full moon we had last Friday. So I know I just pretty much gave data overload on that one. And Dr. Robinson, you're always one for data, so maybe you're going to add to it. But just I'll leave the floor to you on what you thought. And is that a top 10 weather event of 2023?
Oh, down your way, it might be statewide. I don't know. But
would you lump the two together? Would you lump the two
I mean,
weekends together?
Yeah, it was such a nasty weekend. And I might lump Ophelia, the remnants of Ophelia. As I said to several reporters over the end of last week, the storm that keeps on giving. And with that, you had heavy rain. I think epicenter of that heaviest rain was around Toms River over that weekend, but everyone got hit. And then, the fact that the storm parked itself off the mid-Atlantic and kept pulling in rain, some rain, some drizzle, but wind from the northeast and east for the whole week, which contributed to that flooding along, as you mentioned, with the full moon. So it was, it probably will be up there near the top, not just for the rain that fell that weekend, but for the lasting effects that really had its grand finale with the energy and moisture it fed into the system this past Friday. So really an interesting storm. And it just simply was being blocked by high pressure to the north, which of course contributed to that pressure gradient that brought the winds in, kept the storm in place. So, it was, a perfect scenario for the type of miserable conditions we had. The other interesting thing about that was the diurnal temperature range. I mentioned that in class last week, and the student's hand went up. What's diurnal temperature? It's that difference between the daily high and low. And there were 4 out of 5 days during the past week had a diurnal range of like 5-6 degrees. And normally with the sun out and a pleasant day, it could be 20 degrees. Little less near the coast, more inland. Because of the modifying influence of the coast to the high and low temperatures. But, to have 3-4 days in a row with very small diurnal temperature ranges because of the clouds and the onshore flow is really quite remarkable, even in the dead of winter when you have longer nights and, more all-day rains. But in September, really that was unique, but you got to be a little bit of a weather geek to see how unique that was.
No, I mean, I have some numbers here, and I actually posted this on social media. From the 26th to the 30th, our temperature range at Atlantic City International Airport was never, or I'm sorry, at the marina in Atlantic City was never more than 5 degrees. And in fact, 2 of those days, the 27th and the 28th, 2 degrees. That was it. That was the only difference between, the high and the low temperatures. So good catch there. I actually forgot to mention that, so I'm glad you did. And it was kind of nasty here. Let's take a zoom out with precipitation for the month. Wet is pretty much the way to do it, and I feel like this might be the theme for the month of September. The first half of the month, much different than the second half of the month, both in temperatures and precipitation. And we'll get to the temps on the other side of the break, but let's just talk about that rainfall.
Talk about a transitional month. Yeah, I mean, it certainly was wet. The state, statewide, it's going to be a top 10 event. Maybe not quite to the top five, but a top 10 event. But down in the southeast corner, I always come up with the numbers.
Yeah.
For the airport, it was the second wettest, but the records only go back to 1958, the 7.27 inches. At the marina, where the records go back to 1874, it was the 19th wettest.
Right.
But wet it
Length of
was.
time.
Now, in Atlantic County, amongst our CoCoRaHS observers, Egg Harbor City with 8.99 was wettest. And there were 9 cocoa observers over 8 inches in Atlantic County. Hamilton was one of the driest spots in the state, 5 inches. Now, mind you, the average statewide rainfall in September is 4.16. So as we were alluding to earlier, even the driest part of New Jersey in September was wetter than the 30-year average for the month.
Yeah.
Looking back, Cape May County, Dennis, 8.29 inches. Lower Township was driest at 6.31. So a wet Cape May.
Hoo-hoo for them. They were only 2 inches above average.
Yeah, exactly. Ocean County, you go up further to the north, Brick, 12.23 inches of rain. And the driest spot, Little Egg Harbor Township, at 7.37. There were 4 CoCoRaHS stations in Ocean County over 10 inches for the month. I'll sneak in. Cumberland County.
Cumberland.
Little drier, 6.76 was wettest at Fairfield, and 5.96 driest at Upper Deerfield. That's only based on about 6 stations. We need more CoCoRaHS observers.
Yes. We're going to do that story again in the fall.
We've got 12 to 24 active in the other counties.
Yeah.
And then, of course, up in Monmouth County, I got to throw in Monmouth.
Yeah, no, throw it in because the numbers are going to be crazy.
Bradley Beach, of course, with its 10 inches last Friday, had 17.47 inches of rain for the month. Neptune, 16.34. 17 of our observers there had 10 inches or more for the month. And all 19 who had complete enough records for the month were over 8 inches. I mean, we were talking some drought.
Yeah, we were, is the key word.
There were some vestiges of dry conditions in Cape May, Cumberland area, up in the Pinelands, over to the coast. Gone.
Yeah.
Just a little vestige in the Pinelands last week because we went from a D1 to a D0. I can tell you this week, without letting the cat out of the bag.
Breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news. D nada across the state. Now that only happened 4 weeks. 4 of the weeks in May, there was no drought category in the state. Before that, you had to go back to the December 7th, 2021 map to go D nada across the state. So we've been teased by drought. Cape May County, groundwater levels, precipitation deficits here and there.
Yeah.
Very grateful that we are moist enough that there are no drought concerns across the state as we speak this morning.
Totally. And let me ask you this. We got about a minute left before we cut the break. So that Bradley Beach 17.34, is that something noteworthy in the history books for New Jersey, or is that just, hey, it was really wet, but it's not taking a gold medal for anything?
No gold medal. We've had some months like that before, when you've had multiple events that have really added up to it. There was the August of 2011 when we had Irene come in, and there had been multiple ones before that. We didn't get it with Ida because we had Henri later in August, but Ida was the 1st of September.
Yes.
Floyd in 99. It had been quite dry for the most part up till that point. So that was a singleton event. To get those 17-inch numbers, you need to have multiple events. It was October, I can't remember, 2005. There was multiple events that led to the wettest month on record in New Jersey. So not the gold medal, but certainly it's up there on or near the stand.
It's near the metal podium for sure. All right, we are going to take a brief break. On the other side, we're going to talk about this roller coaster ride of temperatures and some fall foliage. You're listening to back to the second half of the Something in the Air podcast. You can download this wherever you get your podcast. We're on all major podcast platforms. And if you're watching, you can watch it on our website, pressofac.com. You can also watch it on the Stockton channel as well as YouTube. So we are all over the place. New episodes come out around the turn of every month here. We try to get it as close to the previous month. So while the past month is still fresh in your mind, we got the data for you. And join with me as we do almost every month here in New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. Now, September temperatures. What a difference half a month makes, right? I mean, we started off feeling like, I think actually it was, and you could tell me, might have been our hottest week of the year, Labor Day week. If not, it was darn close. And then we also had our hottest day of the year, at least here at ACY Airport on September 6th. And then right about literally the 15th of the month, it changed. And we were cool, right? We talked about this, the cool days, and we had the rain and everything. So all in all, though, I think what was most surprising maybe to some people is that we still wound up above average for the month. But that was because of what happened around Labor Day.
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up well. It was a month with two faces, temperature-wise. It wasn't until, October 1st that we got above 80 for the first time in like 2 weeks in some areas. But you're also correct. That first week from about the 3rd to the 8th, that period, where it got over 90 5 days in a row, I guess, 6 days in a row.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, at ACY Airport, we had 6 days in a row of 90 plus. That was actually our longest heat wave solely within the month of September on record.
Yeah. And it was the hottest week of the summer. Now, meteorologists, climatologists consider summer June, July, and August.
Right.
But the other interesting thing is some of the other hotter temperatures of the summer were the first week of June. So as we've seen so often in recent years, it's more of a protracted, rather than have the hottest of the hot days, we just have this persistence of warmth for the shoulder seasons into the heart of summer. And that was an exclamation point this year with the heat that we had that Labor Day weekend into the following week. It was really quite remarkable. We actually, our Mesonet station, our Rutgers Weather Network station at Fort Dix, hit 100. And that was the hottest station in the state for the whole year.
Gotcha.
And there were a bunch of others at 98, 97. So that was a pretty miserable heat wave. The humidity wasn't overwhelming.
No, it wasn't that bad. Cape May County did get a little humid, but you got the Delaware Bay, you got the Atlantic Ocean. It gets humid there. But yeah, all in all, it wasn't super humid.
Yeah, so that was pretty remarkable. But of course, Atlantic City Marina didn't hit 90.
No.
They got up to 88.
3 times.
Yeah, but that was it. So I can't recall if they got over 90 at any point during the summer.
Yeah, I'm going to look this up while you keep talking. I'll look it up while we.
I know High Point didn't, but High Point gets over 90 about once every decade, up 1,800 feet at our station there. But the coastal areas, I know the northern coastal areas had some offshore winds on multiple occasions this summer that put them over 90.
Right.
I wasn't sure. I think the Marina did get to 90.
Actually, it did. So it didn't actually. It hit 88 5 times, but it never got over 90. And then I also just want to point this out: the warmest low temperature of the year at the Marina. And I'm probably from most of the shore, but we'll just say specifically the Marina, 78 degrees on September 8th. Now, what was a little interesting is that most years recently, we've had an 80-degree low. We did not get one this year. Of course, that's still hard to get, but we've been just seeing more of it as our climate's been warming. But in terms of the splits, we like to talk about those splits in the max and the mid temps. Did you notice anything? Was there anything outlying with that, or was it kind of par for the course?
Yeah, it's kind of par. We didn't have anything close to a freeze. our Walpack, Sanderson stations up in the Northwest and our Pineland stations, no one got out of low 40s. 40 was the lowest in the state. And we do on occasion get a freeze at our coldest locations in the last week, 10 days of September. Usually it's the first week or two of October when we start to see our coldest areas get their first freeze. So, if we're talking here a month from now with the October recap and we're not below freezing somewhere in the state, it would be very unusual, but not unusual at all for the coastal areas
Oh,
still
yeah.
to have a freeze through Halloween.
Yeah. What about just talk about like inland South Jersey? When do we typically see our first frost and freezes?
Mid 2 weeks of October, I would say, in the very coldest spots.
Yeah.
We can definitely get those cooler nights with the sandy soils just radiate the heat of the day back up to space on a calm, clear night. So, the blueberry patches, the cranberry bogs can definitely get some frost, which can form above 2 meter temperatures above the ground of 32.
Yeah.
But even those shelters at 2 meters can be down to freezing by the 15th, 20th of October.
Right. And then overall for the month, I don't recall. Do you have the numbers for the month of September where we are above average?
I know in Atlantic City, it's the 12th warmest
Okay.
at the airport, the 21st warmest at the marina. So the departures were only a degree or a degree and a half, but that's based on 1991 to 2020 means, which of course have gotten warmer.
Yeah.
So it's not anywhere near the top 10 for the state.
Right.
But it's averaging a degree or two above normal. And as you said, it was brought down to earth after that early start. I mean, that one above normal week was 10 degrees above normal. So in order to cut that back to just a degree for the month, you knew it had to get chilly later in the month. And well, it did.
If I had some more time, I should have actually split out the 15th to the 30th and the 1st to the 15th and see what shook out. But basically, the second half would be below average and the first half would be well above average. Now that it is October 2nd, people are thinking about, leaf peeping. I already see the leaves. They're changing, not a lot, but they're changing where I am here near the shore. So fall foliage. I actually went to Batsto State Forest and spoke with Mike Zelotis, regional forester. You can check out the article and video on Tuesday, October 3rd on our website. He was saying, last year's foliage was okay. He actually has some optimism that this year is going to be better. Now, full disclosure, this was before the storm we just had. So things probably changed a little bit, but he was confident. He said, we didn't have a lot of extreme heat during the summer. We had a good amount. He said, while it wasn't super wet, obviously, we said it was kind of dry during the summer. It wasn't as bad as last year where we were in drought. And, we still actually averaged out a good amount of sunshine for the month just because of how sunny we were the first half of the month. So what are you seeing up in Rutgers land in New Brunswick? And you want to say anything about fall foliage as we go forward?
Yeah, we're beginning to see some changes and, right at the timely changes. I think we're going to be okay statewide with foliage. You looked, we didn't have drought this summer as we did last summer, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
That's a real positive. We didn't have those extreme temperatures to dry things out as well. Now we've got to look towards the next couple of weeks. You've got to have the cool nights to start the trees shutting down. And maybe the end of September, we did all right on that account to make up for the late start given the heat of early September. But it would be useful for the foliage to get some real cool nights and maybe even down near the freezing mark around the state to really turn the trees off, if you will, so that they can start showing their colors. And we're going to have a mild week this week, but then it looks to get chilly the week after this one.
Yeah.
And with that, I think that bodes well also for some vibrant foliage. So I think there's some real positive aspects to this, and we could have a real nice season as long as the late month doesn't get windy and rainy, and we have weekends like we did in September without one storm where no one can get out and see them. And then the leaves are all blown off. So, a lot of it will depend on what happens later in the month. But I think we're off to a good start.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, we're happy to hear it. It's certainly good news for people to get out and about and check it out. And we got a couple minutes left. We didn't do this in the rundown, so you're more than welcome to defer. But what do we think? Winter is coming. It's early. It's nice out. I was in shorts today. Do you dare to speculate anything, or do we kick it to the November or to the October update?
Let's talk a little more seriously about it when we get to the end of October.
Okay.
But all I can say right now is it's going to be snowier than last winter.
Okay. All right. You heard it here first. When you have 0 inches of snow, it's hard not to,
you can't have negative snow. It's bounded by 0. But seriously, there's an El Nino underway, and there's some indications this is going to be a pretty powerful El Nino in the tropical Pacific. And that does influence conditions here along the East Coast. It's not the strongest signal, but generally the storm track tends to be offshore during El Nino winters, up the Ohio Valley during La Nina, which was the last 3 years. And with that coastal track, we have had some El Nino winters where we've gotten hit real hard with a big snowstorm, 83, for instance, in February. But we've had other El Nino winters where there's just never cold enough when these storms came up the coast to get any snow. And in 73 and 98, big El Ninos, we had nothing. But then we look at 2016, which was a big El Nino, and we did pop a big January snowstorm. So it's kind of feast or famine with the snow in an strong El Nino winter. And most of that snow will fall in 1, maybe 2 events, but the rest of the winter rather docile with some coastal storms. And I do worry about erosion, especially with the way the coast has been pounded here in late September and early October. The defenses, if you will, are down a little bit. So coastal storms, not long lingering snows, not long lingering cold, but a taste of winter now and again, and have to keep an eye out for the nor'easters.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I say this every, fall. Like most of New Jersey is kind of the average snowfall isn't really a good indicator of, how much snow you can expect because, we here at Atlantic County, southeastern New Jersey, somewhere between like 12 to 20 inches, depending on where you are. But like last year, we saw barely anything, if nothing. The year before that, though, we had 2 snowstorms, maybe my favorite snowstorm of all time in the blizzard of 2022. But, where you get it, it's just because the thermals or the temperatures are so finicky here. You really have to go up and you can maybe pinpoint this better, but Sussex County, Morris County, Warren County to, be guaranteed, at least some snow in a winter. But, we're not upstate New York. We're not Vermont. We're not even, Erie or Buffalo where you get the lake effect. It's just finicky here.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. We'll have some more info for you on that winter in our next roundup. We're also going to interview a friend of all of ours here, friend of the show, Judah Cohen. He's coming back on for our annual winter weather outlook. We'll have his episode out in probably that first full week of November. So be on the lookout for that. But the next weather roundup here with Dr. Robinson will be just at probably the very beginning of November here. So you can check out more from Dr. Robinson on his website. You can go to njweather.org. You can check out more there. They have all observations across the state, and we'll be back with you soon. So until then, everybody, take care, and thanks for listening to the Something in the Air podcast.